So we're gonna go first into the most typical postural issues, and then I'm gonna show you some examples of how all of that will affect your flying. As we already started getting into the hips, I'm gonna start from the hips with these posture issues. So our hips should be on level. Basically the hip bones here should be fully on level, looking from the front. And then if I'm looking at my pelvic rim, it also should be on level. And now an anterior pelvic tilt is something where this rim here is tilting forward, and it basically makes you stick your booty out, right? And what this body position does is that it starts contracting from here. So we start creating tightness on the front side of the hip flexors, maybe even quads. My hamstrings here are lengthened and probably a little bit weak. And my lower back muscles are overworking all the time. And I could also feel a little bit of congestion here in the lower spine. It also releases my core. If you're normally standing like that, this is a posterior pelvic tilt. So the top of the hips is turning backwards, right? And now what this is doing, it's lengthening the front side here. It's shortening and tightening my hamstrings. It's also congesting my spine a little bit. As you can see how like my spine gets shorter from the bottom here. And my abdominals here get really tight and tense. Because of how gravity works, when our bones are not stacked, our hips will also affect our upper body and our shoulders. When my hips are moving forward, I'm gonna have to compensate it from the upper body in some manner to be able to actually stand up straight and stay in balance. So slouching is probably the most common thing that we see with the upper body. This also comes not just from that counterbalance, but it comes from the fact that we sit a lot on our computers, we drive cars a lot, and this is just a body position that we tend to use. And now the front side of my body is really tight, the back side of my body is really overstretched. What it also does is it usually starts rotating my shoulders to the front a little bit and dropping my head forward. So now you can see how many parts of my body are actually off that straight plumb line, neutral alignment, where basically my bones are stacked on top of each other and they're helping me and my body to support it. So now the further away we go from that neutral alignment, the more my muscles have to work to make this happen. And this is why this is a big problem. Sometimes our upper body is also moving the opposite direction. So I'm like opening up my chest a lot too much, and I'm usually gonna have a really hard time using my upper abdominals here, and the muscles on the back and the upper back are really congested. Now, whether it's a forward tilt or a backward tilt, it doesn't really matter what kind of postural issue you have, but the worse it gets, which means the further away you move from that neutral alignment, the more issues it causes with your muscles. Like it will cause more tension because the muscles have to overwork, and some muscles need to really stretch out and they end up being very passive. Sometimes we can also be pretty sideways, and this can be a habitual thing. Again, maybe I'm always standing like this and now I'm lengthening one part of my body, or your legs could even be a little bit of different length. But one thing that you want to look also, which we're going to get to in the self-assessment test, is like, are your body sides symmetrical with each other? This will also affect your flying, because then basically you're all the time flying with a slightly twisted wing. With all of these things, how to use them with flying and how to use this awareness with flying is like, once you start understanding what is the starting point in your body, so what is your normal and how it relates to neutral, you can start looking for a different feeling in a lot of the actions that we're doing for flying. But also you will start realizing like what parts of my body actually need to be lengthened and what need to be strengthened for me to start moving more towards that neutral alignment. And it's always easier to work from neutral because now I will have more range both ways. If I'm already stuck here, I cannot open up more. But if I'm starting from the neutral point, now I have a lot more range going both ways. When you start building more body awareness, having these slight posture and alignment issues don't necessarily even bother you so much, because you already know. You know that you have this habit, and then you know how to fight that in the free fall. However, for your general health and your athletic ability and your body's performance, it is really important to start giving our body the tools to work towards the neutral alignment. And workouts are great for this because they will help you lengthen and strengthen the muscles, but it's not just about that. So I can have this pelvic tilt, and now my core is overstretched, and I can go do a core workout for 50 minutes, 30 minutes. I can, you know, work my abdominals, but then for the rest of the day, I'm standing like this. I'm stretching them again, and I'm not really getting stronger there. So when we start having more awareness of like these habits and realizing, catching ourselves from like slouching, now we can do something about it. And now the less habitual time we spend in those body positions, the quicker we can move away from that issue and towards a more neutral alignment. Your posture will also affect how you're working out. And again, because we think that something is neutral because it's our normal. Let's say I know that I have really tight hamstrings because I'm standing like this. So now I want to stretch my hamstrings. But when I'm going into the hamstring stretches, I'm very likely going to have this hip tilt happening again because it feels straight. And now I can actually go pretty far, almost touching the toes, but my hamstrings are not getting any longer because the hamstring attaches to your sitting bones and here in the back of the knee. And for it to lengthen, I actually need to tilt my hips the opposite way. So we take all of these habits into our workouts, and then we're not really getting a lot out of those workouts. And during the mobility classes that we're doing, I'm going to try to give you a lot of proper tools to work towards working smarter and not harder.